What's up, everybody? It's Jeffrey Lyles welcoming you to a special edition of Lyles Movie Files. Joining me today is one of my favorite comic book writers going today. It's Jeremy Adams. Jeremy, how are you
Hello.
today?
I'm so glad to be here. I just enjoy so much what you do. I routinely go to your little website and like look at different reviews for things. So I'm excited to be here too.
I appreciate it. So let's just start in. You've done so many things. I first got exposed to your work when you were coming on board one of my recent most favorite comic book runs, and pun fully intended, when Joshua Williamson, he was one of the last trio standing, I would say, of the DC Rebirth Initiative. And he wrote this really great run of The Flash, and
Like 120 issues, Jeffrey. Like just crazy.
it was amazing. I was like, this is awesome. And there's that point when you're reading a comic book that you're into for years and years, and it's like, this is the final issue. And it's like, oh no, who is this guy that they're gonna have come on board now? They're gonna ruin everything. And
Yeah.
that was absolutely not the case. And from the first issue, it's like, oh, wait a second, this guy gets it too. And it was so much fun reading all the exploits, Wally back in the forefront of the book, and
Yeah.
just all the different characters that showed up in that galactic tag team wrestling match is like one of my favorite issues I read in a long time. It's just
Oh
like
man.
every issue. So, when I'm reading and reviewing the books, it's like the ones I'm like, all right, let's read it and build up to the main events. Flash was regularly one of my books that I was like, we're gonna say this to the end because
That's so kind, man. That was
yeah.
such a fun book to do. I swear it means so much to me, that book. And I had so much fun. It just lent itself to do like one-offs and
Mhm.
experiment, and I missed that a little bit. Green Lantern is a little more serialized.
Yeah.
And but boy, I love the flat. I love Wally. I even when they told me I was going to be off the book, I was so like heartbroken that I was just like, are the kids going to be okay? I was so attached. And Mark Waid had told me he had said that he couldn't read The Flash for years after he had finished because it was just invested in it. And I
Yeah.
totally get that. Totally get that.
And Flash has been one of those titles where it's had a long legacy of great creators. Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison, Joshua Williamson, now Jeremy Adams. I was like, when your
Exactly.
final issue, I was like, he's joining the pantheon of these great modern writers of Flash. And so much fun. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to it? Because the rebirth books were starting to see a lot of shifts in creative teams,
Yeah.
and different writers were coming and going, and there were like a few like Tom King on Batman, Rob Williams on Suicide Squad, and Flash that had their original writers for a really long time.
Yeah.
So when those writers left the titles and the new crop of writers came on, in some cases the books just ended.
Yeah.
What was it like for you joining Flash and like, okay, the pressure's on you?
What's interesting is like between Josh and I think there was a few different writers just for a little bit. And for me, I'd been roped in during the 5G thing that was going to happen, and it eventually became Future State. And so my first comics were these backup issues in these Future States,
Mhm.
and I was just so freaking thrilled to do comics. Like I never thought I would get the opportunity. I've always been striving to do it. I couldn't believe they gave me the opportunity. I was so excited to do it. And Mike Cotton, who was my editor at the time, he calls me up, and I know I wasn't the first person he called up. I probably wasn't even the second person. And he called up and he said, "Hey, do you have any ideas for the Flash?" And I'm like, "Bro, I'm a nerd of a certain age. I have an idea for everything." And I kind of pitched him this kind of quantum leapy type thing, and he was like, he just paused and he goes, "Well, that's better than what we got." And he goes, "So you're taking over the Flash?" And I was like, "What?" And
Yes.
so I was so excited to take over the Flash. And but I really, really thought they had told me very early on, it's rare that anybody gets more than 12 issues on any book. That was kind of the
Mhm.
thing they told me. And the company was in such upheaval with Warner Brothers being like sold and bought and cut
Mhm.
down and stuff. I just knew that if I just turned things in on time, I'll let the chips where that fall where they may. I'm definitely a fan, so I understood that the landscape of fandom is they may like you and they may hate you. Like that's going to be the way it is. And
Mhm.
but people just started, really responding to Wally, and it was so easy to write Wally because it was so very close to my own life in terms of I'm married with 2 kids and a very strange job, and so all of that came really easily. And also, I just wanted to do comics for so long. It was a great way to just kind of like explode and explore and do stuff. And then I kept thinking they're never going to let me do this. I better do it now. Like
Yeah.
when the Doctor Fate issue came out, I was like,
Yes.
I've been thinking about doing that for a long time. If I ever got in comics, and I just kept thinking they're never going to let me write that long. I better get that out now. And you know, the some of the goofy and crazy things I was doing. It was a matter of me like, well, who knows how long I get to do this. And it just kept going and going, and people just kept responding. And yeah, man, it was so fun. And I was setting up another long arc when they asked me to leave after 1 Minute War, which did really well.
Mhm.
I was excited because I was like, oh, I'm going to do next year. I'll do a 2 minute war. Then I'll do a 3 minute war. I'll ride this train. But my real goal, I remember saying, I had lunch with Tim Sheridan and Jeff Johns, and I said, I really want to make it to issue 800. And they're all like, Jeremy, don't get ahead of, over your skis. And in my head, I'm like, I'm doing it. I was like, and I remember thinking like, I got to get Josh and Jeff and Mark to do like little,
Mhm.
you know, parts of that issue.
Yeah.
And and I'm a little bit like an excited puppy, when I said, hey, let's get these guys to do it. And they're like, there's no way you'll get them to do it. And I'm like, I'll get them to do it. And they're all so friendly and sweet that they got to do it. In fact, one of my prized possessions is like I have a Flash 800 that's signed by them
Oh,
with some
cool.
really nice things on the cover. And it was just a joy, man. It was such a joy. I think that's why it was so hard to be taken off the book. And they said the sales were fine. They wanted to go in a new creative direction, and but I was really honestly too close to the book. I was so just entrenched in that family. And it was kind of moving it into this more almost Fantastic Four type vibe, and I was having so much fun doing it. So it was a new challenge to take on Green Lantern, and but I was just convinced. I was like, well, this is over. I'm sure they'll Green Lantern will last a couple issues. Like I have that same self-doubt in everything I do.
So you've gotten congratulations on the exclusive contract
Thank
with
you.
DC
Thank you.
now. And one thing that always stood out to me early on with the writing was how you have the characters' voices. Like it's like some writers will come on, it's like, this isn't
Yeah.
how it's supposed to sound, and whatever supposed to is
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
reader perspective. But it felt like you knew the backstory of these characters back and
Right.
forth, where you could pull like, oh, I remember that issue he's referencing, and it
Yeah,
just felt like, oh man, he's got the who's who. He's thumbing through and he's referencing
totally.
these characters.
I do. Right behind me. Yeah. No, I'm like that. That's the stuff I loved as a kid. Like the Marvel Handbook and the Who's Who when I was growing up was huge. But also because I didn't have the internet growing up. I would check out any book I
Mhm.
could. I would read Wizard magazine.
Right.
I tried to, ingest as much of that knowledge as I could. And then with the internet, you know, I do. I don't say I pride myself like it's a tough thing. I freaking love it going deep. Like when I was writing the Mortal Kombat movies, like I was just like I was going deep. I
Mhm.
was scraping the bottom, and that to me is it's super fun to write something that is accessible to new people. But if
Mhm.
you're an old timer like me, you go, oh my gosh, like you're sitting there just excited about some weird facet that they bring up that you're like I'll give you an example. Like I grew up, one of the first events I remember, not first events, but really
Mhm.
one of the first events that I took part in my conscious mind
Mhm.
was the build up to Millennium in DC
Wow.
Comics.
Yeah.
I don't think it ended well, but like that's why in my Green Lantern, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have Tom Calamacu, and I was originally gonna have Floronic Man because they were both
Oh,
part
wow.
of the New Guardian,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
they wouldn't let me do the Floronic Man. And but at the same time, I was like, I'm making a Millennium reference here. And there's a lot of people that are like, what is that? And the people that are like, I can't believe he did that because they're like, that was terrible. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, at the time it was just important to my brain, you know?
Mhm.
So I do that a lot. I do that. The Dominator showing up in something. It's like,
Right.
well, Invasion was a big book for me.
But I think that's what makes your book so fun is because it clearly shows that it's not about the money for you. It's not about, hey, I
Right.
get to write this character. It's like, I love these characters. I love this book. And it really comes across reading it like the
Cool.
Super Friends
Yeah.
issue
Oh
where it's
my
like,
gosh.
it's just amazing.
Dude, that's the one that I caught Mike Cotton told me that we can get Kevin McGuire to do it. And I thought that you're lying. What are you talking? Like it felt like a dream. Like I was like, I don't understand what you're saying, you know? And and that was the one that I remember thinking, like, if even if they fire me tomorrow, they'll never take this away from me. Like this is the pinnacle of success in my mind is
Mhm.
getting to work with Kevin McGuire. And then I met him at New York Comic Con, and what a loser I am. I am like Chris Farley in an elevator, just like, hi, Mr. McGuire. Like I mean, I just couldn't. And even to this day, I think I'm every time I see him, I'm friendlier with him now, but I am such a loser. I complete and utter, hey, what's going on? Like, like I love that guy so much, and his artwork is is still so important to me, you know.
Yeah. I think if you grew up a certain time reading that Justice League book where
Yeah.
it's like, wow, I mean, they were great artists before, but it just felt like he
Yeah.
captured these personalities in a way where it's like, yeah, I can't think of Martian Manhunter without him eating
Yes.
those not
Yes.
Oreos. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the Guy Gardner that I'll forever see is his Guy Gardner, you know,
Right.
and
One
it's
punch.
yeah, one punch, and the fact, just everything, yeah, he made me laugh, like him and Giffen and like they're Dave Mateus, they like that was just so big for me, and just by the way, redefined so many of those characters for so long.
Yes.
I just adore it. But yeah, that issue in particular, like getting to do a little Super Friends thing, it was just it was a weird feeling. It was a great feeling. And looking back on it, I totally see that I overwrote it. But I was like, it just worked with his art, you know?
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll see somebody like just post the panel of Wally like slapping Lex Luthor a billion times.
Yeah.
And it just works on a billion levels, you
Uh,
know? It's like I want to do that book all the time, you know?
absolutely. Now, you're working on Green Lantern, you're doing Green Lantern Corps with Morgan Hampton, and
Yeah.
that first issue, I was like, "Oh, this is so much fun." For people who haven't picked it up, can you talk a little bit about Green Lantern Corps and, like, what you guys are trying to do with it?
Yeah. So like in the main Green Lantern book, part of what I felt like was my job and obligation was to bring the book back to somewhat of a status quo. And part of that was to integrate into the main book all the other Earth Lanterns specifically, and reintroduce them in a way. The hope, and my hope had been like maybe we'll generate enough enthusiasm for a Green Lantern Corps book. And so the great thing is that Morgan and I are doing this book, which is very much about the reconstituted core, but they're low on recruits. The big issue right now is the emotional spectrum is completely destroyed, and so people are manifesting different parts of the emotional spectrum all around the galaxy. So not only do they have to fight crime, they have to deal with this kind of randomized emotional bombs, essentially, that
Mhm.
human bombs that start showing up everywhere. And the idea that we had is that we'll be able to take a couple issues and focus on like a main lantern and maybe another lantern, and then we'll move to a different story with a couple other different lanterns, and a different story with a couple other different lanterns. while they're both servicing Green Lantern and this one are servicing this overarching plot of this Sorrow Lantern that's working with Starbreaker to build a new lantern that will have disastrous, effects on the world if it's able to be lit. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
And seeing Starbreaker in the book was very cool. Just like,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, that was really
Starbreaker.
fun. Yeah,
And I really loved how it felt like CSI,
yeah,
LA or New York,
yeah,
NYPD, all that good stuff, the NBC
yeah,
procedurals.
yeah, yeah. Dun, dun. Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Where it was just like right from the moment. And of course, I always look for Guy Gardner in these books and like the little alien behind him was like, it's just like,
yeah,
I love those little touches. And I love the fact you guys, Fernando
yeah,
Pizarro,
yeah.
I've been a big fan of his
Me
work.
too.
And when you guys collaborate, it's like, yes, this is awesome. And
He's so good.
so,
I've never seen an artist more excited about doing something. He's so excited about Green Lantern Corps. Like he loves it so much.
yeah, Nick, you've been doing Green Lantern, you mentioned Flash, and you also mentioned Mortal Kombat, but
Yeah.
there's another DC movie you worked on that was outstanding, The Battle of the Super Sons.
Oh, oh, one of my favorite things I've ever done. That and Soul of the Dragon. But Super Sons is just, it's like, oh, I could do 1,000 more of those movies, you know?
It was so much fun. Are you talking with the new regime over with DC about potentially doing more animation projects? For a while, it
No,
felt like DC was the home of really great animated movies, while the live action was just kind of there. And
yeah.
so you talking with them or interested in
No, I
doing
mean,
more with them?
when the new kind of like James Gunn regime came in, a lot of stuff, uh, he's moving in a different direction.
Hmm.
I have, I think, one DTV left, but for the most part, no, I don't know them. Obviously, selfishly, I would kill to meet those guys
Hmm.
or be able to pitch or be thought of because obviously I've been very lucky to work with some amazing collaborators like Rick Morales and Bruce Timm and different people on some projects that I just think are, like I said, I think Batman Soul of the Dragon is amazing. I think Battle of the Super Sons was amazing. I really enjoyed doing the JSA World War II. So I have that background, but I don't know. I mean, I'm here if they need anything. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You also mentioned Justice Society. You've been
Yeah.
able to play in their sandbox for a little
Yes.
bit too. What was that like for you? Because that was also really fun stint
The
you
the
did with those
movie or the show or the books?
the
Like
books,
they're doing
their
the
appearance.
Jay Garrick, the Golden
Yeah.
Age stuff.
Uh-huh.
I I really love the JSA, and I really wish they would just be able to do like a World War II JSA story. I would love to see that. Just the ongoing World War II story with the JSA would be really neat. I'm a big fan of those characters, um, and Jeff obviously, you know he
Yeah.
kind of put his mark on those books for ages. And then when he asked me to write the Jay Garrick thing, it's again, there's a level of love that I found with Judy and Jay and Joan and just that whole kind of family, vibe of the JSA. But I haven't I've read a couple issues of Jeff Lemire's stuff, so it's great. So, but
Mhm.
he's going to be on that book for a billion years. But yeah, I love the JSA. I love all. This is the thing. I love all this stuff. Like
Mhm.
that's the hard thing. It's like I would. It kills me because I'm greedy. I just want to play on every sandbox.
And you've done some really cool things, even with characters who are just traditionally thought of as solo standalone characters like Flash and Green Lantern. I really loved how you incorporated the heroes in crisis
Oh,
characters. I was like, thank you.
yeah.
And it was just so with that in mind, is there any books, any team books that you just love to get a crack at just tackling for 3 or 4 years?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Besides all of them, my big thing, I would love to do a young justice type thing. I would love to do like a kid centered, in continuity kid centered. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like I love New Warriors at Marvel. I love Young Justice when Peter David was doing it. I love the idea of there's a lot of kids in the DCU right now,
Mhm.
and I would love to do something in that that vein because I feel like it would give me the same opportunity to kind of do what I did with the Flash. Like you could have a lot more crazy, fun, interesting issues, but also building up and highlighting a lot of cool characters that exist out there that nobody's really playing with that much.
Okay, you
Um,
gotta give me a couple examples there.
so when in the Flash book, I was kind of building up Jay and Irie and
Mhm.
Maxine,
Yeah.
and then I brought in the Super Sons from another universe. And there's also all the Golden Age kids. There's Quiz Kid and Fair Play now, which is Mr. Terrific's son.
Mhm.
And you have Blue Beetle's sidekick. I forget his name. That, like I said, Jeff brought in like 12 different kids.
Yeah.
And then you have all the Teen Titans Academy kids that are still out there.
Right, right,
So
right.
there's a huge swath of younger heroes that I don't know if people aren't using them because they just don't know or that it's just too complicated. But I feel like it would be an unbelievably cool, satisfying thing to just go on some whimsical adventures, because there's something about like when we were doing Super Sons movie, it's very Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn,
Mhm.
and that vibe of like, well, they don't know better, so they get in a lot of trouble is a great way to explore the DC universe, but also, like I said, build up some other characters, see what they're like.
What I really liked about how Super Sons, because it didn't feel like you were writing adults that look like kids. They
Right.
were totally like, "Oh, yeah, it's a dumb thing a kid would do. Oh, I can do this too, watch." And,
Yeah.
you're saying that, and you mentioned your love of JSA, and, yeah, I'm just, like, envisioning you writing an all-star squadron type with
Oh,
all of the kids in the DC universe.
that'd be fun. That would be
Yeah,
really, really fun. Oh my gosh. That's a great idea. I might have to steal that, Jeff.
go for it. That one's
Okay.
free of charge.
All right, good, good.
So what can readers expect to see coming up next from Green Lantern and, Green Lantern Corps?
So Morgan and I have a plan for kind of an internal event that's going to take place in the books. That's going to kind of like the culmination of the Starbreaker stuff and the Sorrow stuff and the other spectrum, like the fractured spectrum stuff, which I think is going to be really cool and interesting. And it's going to go from Green Lantern to Green Lantern Corps to Green Lantern Corps, and we're going to be able to see that play out in kind of like a cool cosmological way. And I think it will be really wild the way it plays out. I think so. I'm excited about that. And Morgan and I are just throwing around some crazy ideas that I think will be really really neat. So you can see that. Also, uh, we have some guest stars showing up in Green Lantern, which I'm excited about. Some, uh, I mean, shoot, the next issue starts a run where I start introducing a lot of characters, reintroducing a lot of characters. So we'll see if people are annoyed with it or not.
I always like when Hal shows up in a Flash book and vice versa. It's like,
Yeah,
from reading Mark Waid and Brian
yeah,
Augustine's JLA Year One, it's like, these guys are awesome. This
yeah.
book should keep going.
I
And
agree.
so anytime now I see those two, it's like, yes, he's about to ask Barry for some money. And
Yeah.
yeah, he's gonna give him a little pound and they're gonna do their thing. And are there any other relationships in the DC universe that you would like to explore more like that, where the best friends just kind of hang out and they, oh, by the way, they also happen to be superheroes?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I do like I've really fallen in love with Mr. Terrific, at least the kind of Buckaroo Banzai version that I was kind of
Mhm.
playing with.
Yes.
And I did like him and Wally. Um, there is a clamoring for Wally and Kyle that I think would be fun to, throw around a little bit. I think that you could do a really fun Brave and the Bold with them for a little bit. That would
Yes.
just be really. In fact, you could do the triangle of Superboy, Kyle, and Wally, and it would be really, really, really fun. But as far as relational stuff, I one of the things that I really enjoy is I have two daughters, and I really enjoy kind of even if I do it ham-fistedly, I like building up some of the female characters into kind of like bigger heroes. Like, so the Carol is not just Hal's girlfriend, but she's
Right.
a superhero in her own right. And I started hitting upon some like fun relationships between her and Dove, and some other characters that I think, I've introduced this character named Odyssey, who is kind of a lovable antagonist to Gold Beetle, which is another character I have. And so
Mhm.
obviously I have a massive love for those characters. But I'm also not one of those, even though I have gotten criticism, oh, they're going to bring Gold Beetle. It's like, listen, I am using her sparingly. So, like, I don't bring her in all the time. But when I do, it's a blast, it's the same
Exactly.
with like Omega Bandman and stuff. I desperately want to do an Omega Bandman miniseries or something. Even if
And
it's
I
a
would
one shot, I would be, you know,
and
I
you have
love it.
absolutely gotta talk to Todd McFarlane about getting us an Omega
Oh,
Bandman figure
come on.
because
I have a custom belt, Omega Bandman
nice.
belt. That I'm like, any wrestler that wants to take it from me has to take it from me. Yeah.
Classic. Um, is there anything else that I haven't asked that you'd like to tease about
No,
what's
man.
coming up?
Yeah, I'm really excited about my new venture at DC, in terms of like, I have a couple things coming I can't really talk about yet, but I'm super excited about it. And it's, the future's bright at DC. So I'm really, really excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out to
Thank you,
talk with
Jeff.
me, and I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you.
And hopefully we'll talk again real soon.
We
Thanks so
will.
much. I
Thanks.
appreciate it. So for now, this episode of Lyle's Movie Files has been filed.